Hello? Good morning. My name is Sarah Craven. I'm the chief of the Washington office of UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund. On behalf of UNFPA, I'm pleased to welcome you to the Washington launch of the 2007 State of the World Population Report, Unleashing the Potential of Urban Growth. This year's report is also supported by a youth supplement, Growing Up Urban, which looks at these same issues through the eyes of young people. This report marks the 30th State of the World Population Report issued by UNFPA. It is being launched today in London, New York, Copenhagen, Johannesburg, Bangkok, Lagos, and other cities around the world. Urbanization, the increase in the urban share of total population, is the focus of this year's report. This report recognizes that while urbanization is inevitable, it can also be positive and provides both challenges as well as unique opportunities. UNFPA is focusing on the issues of urban growth and urbanization this year as we see these issues as increasingly looming as a critical development issue for future decades. I'm delighted to be here today to introduce our distinguished panel who will speak today about this report, discuss the implications of impending urban growth, and suggest the action steps needed to take this challenge head on. I will introduce each of our speakers, and after their formal remarks, we will open the floor for questions from the audience. We're very honored today to be the city around the world that got the principal author of the report, George Martin. George Martin is a Canadian sociologist and demographer. He holds a PhD from Brown University and has worked most of his life on development issues in Latin America, especially in Brazil. He is the president of the Brazilian Association for Population Studies, as well as scientific director of the Population Development and Environmental Research Project. His past positions have included serving as the director of UNFPA's country support team for Latin America and the Caribbean, and as a senior fellow at Harvard University Center for Population and Development. We're delighted to have him here today, and he will be presenting the report.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to be here in Washington with you and to present both the State of the World Population and its complement on Growing Up Urban, which presents the challenges of urbanization through the much more expressive eyes and voices of young people. Our topic this year is urbanization. We think it is a very timely topic. Next year, for the first time in history, more than half the world's people will be living in towns and cities. Urban areas in the world are growing at more than 1.2 million a week. This means that by 2030, the urban population of the world will have swelled to almost 5 billion. Globally, all future population growth will be in cities since rural areas are decreasing in absolute numbers. Most of this urban growth will occur in developing countries. Africa and Asia alone will account for 80% of urban growth in coming decades. In those two regions, all the growth that has taken place since the beginning of human history will be doubled in only 30 years' time. But even more important than the numbers is what urbanization will mean for people. Urbanization will shape our social, our economic, and our environmental future. The way cities grow and organize themselves, both in developed and developing countries, will be critical for humanity. We believe that an inevitable urban growth can be positive, both for socioeconomic development and for sustainability. But for this to happen, cities need to prepare now. If they wait and simply react to growth as they've been doing, it will be too late. History has never seen anything like the scale of upcoming urban growth. Surprisingly, the impacts of this growth have yet to capture the public's imagination. And unfortunately, very little is being done to maximize the potential benefits of this transformation or to reduce its potentially chaotic consequences. Urbanization can and should be a force for good. No country in the industrialized age has ever achieved significant economic growth without urbanization. Yet, anyone who has traveled throughout the world recently is well aware of the fact that most cities in developing countries already have huge problems, like sprawling slums, lack of clean water and sanitation, violence, and environmental degradation. But these problems are only like the tip of the iceberg compared to what the future holds for us, unless we do something about it now. The main message of this swap is that urban growth is inevitable, but that it can be positive for poverty reduction and sustainability. But for good things to happen, a different approach will have to take place. We cannot simply expect the market to take care of things. Even traditional urban planning approaches will fall short. So an urgent change in mentality is required. We cannot expect to fix the problems as cities grow. We have to plan ahead using the built-in advantages of urban concentration to help reduce poverty and to promote sustainability. Too often, cities try to make the poor invisible. They see them as festering eyesores and would like them to disappear as soon as possible. They fail to recognize the right of the poor to the city. The failure of this approach is counted in human lives and in urban crises. Yet, as bad as conditions may be in the slums, and they are terrible beyond my power to describe, people continue to have hope of a better life for themselves and for their children. Dreams, as well as harsh realities, are driving urban growth. Instead of trying to make the poor invisible, policymakers should work together with the energy and the creativity that the associations of the urban poor have shown to help solve urban problems. Instead of trying to prevent urban growth, policymakers should learn to prepare ahead, ensuring that the poor have a decent piece of land on which they can build their shelter, and on this basis, begin to take advantage of what the city has to offer. In the same way, cities concentrate today most of the major environmental problems. But surprisingly, they are also the best hope for sustainability. Again, bridging the gap between critical degradation on the one hand and sustainability on the other will require more proactive approaches. How cities grow, the form they take, and the way they deal with things such as space, energy, transport, and waste makes a huge difference. Planning ahead in these domains is absolutely essential if cities are to fulfill a favorable role. This year's State of the World Population Report is a call to action, but it is also a cry of hope. Cities concentrate poverty, but they also represent poor people's best hope of escaping it. Cities create environmental problems, but they also create solutions. The vast urban expansion in developing countries has global implications and requires a global response. Urbanization is inevitable, the train is in motion, and together we have to make sure it's on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George.